In what ways does your media product use, develop, or challenge forms and conventions of real media products? My magazine is called Pulse Magazine, and initially I looked at the two magazines, Metal Hammer and Terrorizer. Straight away I noticed they have an incentive line across the top, which I decided I wouldn't incorporate. I decided I'd challenge that sort of convention that's carried across quite a few magazines, even Mojo, which is of a different genre to mine. It's quite a poppy, old-styled, rock-associated genre. Um, as well as it's got one along the bottom as well. I decided to challenge this because I thought that my page, it has quite a staple look about it. It's got a very big, bold, textured title which carries across the main house style. It's immediate. You see it instantly. It catches your eye. It's the main title. It's the main cover line. It's very bold and definitive. You immediately associate with this kind of text with the genre, and I thought I wouldn't disrupt it. I think I'd leave it as it was, as a sort of simplistic look. It's quite nice to look at. I did incorporate the idea that magazines are stacked in front of each other, and you usually see the left side, so I decided to put the title sideways on top of that because it lines up with the guitar. It's parallel to the guitar, same as the main quote here. The cover lines stripped down the left side, a couple on the right side, but mainly down the left because that's the side you see. That's a convention I followed. I decided to develop the idea of the model, the pose, the expression. Usually what happens is you have the shouting model expression. He's got his tattoos, so he's shown them well. He's associated with the genre, so a fist with knuckle dusters on. Five Finger Death Punch is sort of known for, his deathly hand as such, which is ready to punch. The metal genre is quite associated with fighting, violence, brutality, and it's shown within this page here, this cover page. Even with the colours, everything's layered over everything else. It's very busy, very moved. However, Terrorizer instantly challenges that. So, straight away you've got this man staring at the camera it's a mid-shot, same as this one really, but they're both mid-shots, which is followed quite a lot through the genre, the metal genre. Unlike Mojo, which is a little bit further back. It's halfway between a mid-shot and a long shot, really. It captures the facial expression, which is very important in the metal genre. So straight away anger, straight away seriousness. It immediately establishes some sort of tense mood here. This one's quite released emotions. Yeah, I decided to challenge both of them completely, and I had a model which had the focal point of the guitar she was holding forward, because that's part of the story, and her iconic blue hair showing, and her black shirt sort of fades off into the background, because her hair, her face, her guitar is the important part, but she doesn't have any major metal connotated expression. She just has the a sort of glazed over surprised look at a guitar because it associates with the story. You have no idea how much I've missed it. It's slid along the guitar to show what the story is associated with. It does challenge the whole convention of your stereotypical screaming, the whole 2 fingers up, 2 down in the middle pose, as well as the whole jewelry thing. Everything about these two pictures, the props revolves around anger, the metal genre in general, whereas I've just got this simple girl with a guitar. She's quite innocent. The persona I've created for her is quite innocent, whereas on this sort of genre, the older style, it's just Paul McCartney, I believe, it has the incentive across the top as well. It's got quite a lot of conflicting colours. Although there is quite a small colour palette, I suppose. It's just the way that it all clashes. So you've got black, red, grey, white, red, black, black, white. The words are they're just clashing in all places. I decided that my magazine did look quite set apart from that genre, and it did relate back to the metal genre instantly. You've got the guitar, which conveys the idea of the music she plays. shining, tattooed sort of area on the guitar, dust along the guitar to sort of show how old it is, how she hasn't touched it in a while. Moving on to the contents page, I looked at Mojo again to establish what a few magazines would look like from each other. Then I looked at Terrorizer and Hammer again, Metal Hammer. Metal Hammer had 3 columns, although it did look a bit scruffy. It did look quite scruffy. You've got like a random image thrown in between those 2 columns there. Although there were 3 definite columns. which is one of the things I developed. One of the things I developed, one of the conforms and conventions, is the idea that you have just listings of pages with the red accent colour and the normal text. Although he did use information, Metal Hammer did use information below each heading, each cover line. I didn't. I just used the main title, as I thought that I'd just keep the simplicity. I wouldn't make it too busy. On top of that, it would leave me quite panicked for space. Metal Hammer used numbers next to images if they were related to a certain story. So if that were number 53, you'd find number 53 here, for example, and that would be associated with it, and you'd think, oh, I know that person, I want to see that story, and you'd find the number and it'd tell you where the page is and everything. I decided to carry across a similar idea. At first, one of my drafts, I did have a few more images where the social network buttons are. Social network icons are. But I swapped them out for reasons I'll explain later. And I would have, if there was a story, I would have and there were a picture in the corner. If the picture were linked to the story, I would leave a number just to sort of show you where that story would be if you want to jump to it, which is something I've followed. Which, it doesn't happen in every magazine, it just happened in Metal Hammer. And I quite like that idea, so I decided to use that convention. Sorry. Over here with Terrorizer, we've got the regulars and the features columns, which I decided to use. I decided to incorporate into my magazine, as it's used quite a lot, even in over here with Mojo. Regulars, features, cover story. It's separated. It's a nice layout. It's very easy to navigate. It avoids confusion. Like instead over here, you've just sort of got the laid out, not very obvious version. We've got a similar thing over here as well, with the whole idea of just straight out columns. So each page has 5 columns, same as what I've done over here. I've just got 3 because it's just very simple. The text can afford to be bigger and larger and everything. I've retained the house style, the idea of big bloody font, text, boldness, texture, movement. I've incorporated chains, which is something I've challenged it in a sense, but I've also developed it. So the contents pages I've researched don't incorporate a lot to assist in the general tone that they're trying to create. However, they don't really need to because of the people on it, the models, the stories, the way the text is written. But I thought I'd incorporate that early to establish the house style because my DPS did not feel as metal orientated as the other pages, as I decided to make it completely focal to my artist. So I've challenged that in a bit, but it does stay along with the whole conventions of a metal magazine containing chains, borders, the idea of blood splashing, movement. It has retained sort of house style I intended. Over here with my DPS, I've decided to sort of scruff it up a bit. I've decided to go a little bit more wild with colour, so I've used blue quite a lot, although my normal palette is red opposed to blue. This is because it showed a lot of the blue associates with the story, so Frisbee down here, her signature, sort of splashed over with blue paint of varying tones. You've got this paint here back with the wind on my side because it's associated to the story. But at the same time you've got this red, this blood, this splashing, this texture, this movement. And it clashes because you've got blue, which is associated and connotated with calmness, while you've got red, which is the sort of anger, frustration, stuff that links to Pulse, and why I named the magazine Pulse, because red associated with blood, movement, music, pumping, beat, rhythm, anger, emotion, you know, that sort of idea. But other magazines, such as Terrorizer again, have just sort of stayed with their normal conventions of using the red, the blacks, the greys, the browns, the sort of rugged splatters of blood, bullets which line areas, which is what I've used the chains for, which the chains are incorporated again into this because I've got this little area up here which hangs by chains, the columns, and I've got chains in the corners, basically peripheral objects to sort of build up a general tone that I want to keep and maintain and establish, the house style. Along the top here, I've got sort of I've got a sort of area like a box which I've developed from this magazine. I've developed their whole sort of convention of having bullet points, literal bullet points across the top, associated with the genre of violence. Quite a nice little pun play on words there. I've decided to carry that across to my magazine and incorporate into my own sort of style. I've used the whole idea of a box across the top, which is sort of segregated from the rest, but I've incorporated it into it. So instead of having its something completely different, or bullet points, like as shown here, just general little marks and things, I've decided to use it as a way of displaying gigs, because I found that one of the things my audience wanted to see was a lot of gigs. And I've noticed with a lot of magazines, they don't get straight to the gigs, which some people don't like. The DPS is usually completely reserved for... the DPS is not usually completely reserved for the story, but I decided to challenge that. I decided to completely revolve my DPS around the story, even including this area up here, which is to do with the gigs. Which is why the blue text is used, because it carries across to her hair, which is her sort of iconic thing. Opposed to this, where they don't really associate any colour with their model. So yeah. I've challenged a lot of conventions, such as the model, the way she looks, the idea that the cover page does not need as much movement, it can be simplistic while also maintaining that sort of value of being metal orientated. The contents page and DPS, I've sort of played safe. I've sort of used many conventions from lots of different magazines that I've looked at, including some of my peers, and just built a magazine which is just easy to navigate. Cover page is mainly for establishment, eye-catching, hence the colours, sort of the way she's holding the guitar, associated with the genre, whereas the contents page, although it does carry across the whole idea of the genre, it is a lot more reserved than some magazines are, such as Terrorizer here, which is just complete chaos on a page. But yeah, thank you for watching this video.